Welcome back to the second part of our AVnTech4Church webinar. Let me now hand you over to our second presenter, Robert Su. Robert, all yours.
All right, thank you. Thanks to my colleague, Stephen, for covering all the very, very heavy and meaty stuff. Now leads me to the easier part of this presentation. Because of time, I'm going to go real quick, as usual. My section covers more on screens. Everybody talks about projectors and display systems and so forth, but very little emphasis is placed on screens, because screens are maybe as equally important, but a lot of people do not put emphasis on it. So remember, a projector screen system, right, is comprised of two sections, the projector and the screen. So let's talk about the screen now, because without the proper screen, the projector will not be able to provide the optimum image quality that it was designed to deliver. So let me just run through the various options for projector screens and some of the very important technical aspects that you must understand, especially when you're going to get your next screen. So let's talk about the common types of projection screens. We have the typical portable screen. I'm just going to go through this list very quickly. And then we have the manual and motorized screen. We have the fixed frame screen. It's getting more now. And then we have the rear projection screen, which I think you have heard Stephen present on that, on the system. And then we have this very interesting thing called the ambient light rejection screen, or the ALR screen, something that I think is good for us to know, especially when you are dealing with very high ambient lights. Then there's this very interesting acoustically transparent screen. Now, what is that? I'm going to cover that in a while. A lot of people are asking about this. What is this optical or screen paint? So these are the various options. So if you're dealing with projectors and you need to project it on the surface, these are the various options that you have. So let's go into the first option, which is a portable screen. Now, portable screen has been around for ages. When I first started out back in the early 90s or even the 80s, I was really dealing with portable screen. In fact, the one you see on the screen right now, the one on the left with the little tripod, I've been using that for since then when I first started. I think it's called a tripod stand or tripod screen. And these are great for temporary or ad hoc applications. You have seen people carrying around a temporary or a portable screen like this. When it's all folded up, it looks like a bazooka. So it's really interesting, but really heavy. They are relatively cheap, but are there downsides to portable screens? Now, there are setups that requires manpower and time for tearing down and setting up. So remember, when you use a screen, it's not like the screen that you have back in church, which is all nicely installed. And every time you just turn on the projector and it's ready to use. So here you need people to go and set it up. And the bigger the portable screen, the longer time you need and the more manpower you require. Right? But these are very, very how shall I put it, convenient. But there's another thing you need to look into, safety issue, because especially when there are a lot of human traffic around, particularly when there are children running around. And in churches, in the children ministry room or in the nursery, if you have a portable screens like this, it can be quite dangerous when you're running around because there's this tripod leg that extends out. The kids may trip over them, even adults will trip over them. So there are safety issues that you have to look into whenever it comes to portable screens. So let's look at the very common ones, like the manual and motorized screens. All of us are very familiar with this. As long as you have a projector, probably you have seen or used this. So there's a manual screen that you see on the left side of your computer screen right now. These are very common, and even today they are used. You see people, pulling down the screen, and then when you want to keep it, they bring it back up. Now, these are very convenient and safer to use than portable screens, of course, because they're permanently mounted. They're much cheaper than motorized screens. I want to touch upon motorized screens in a while. However, it is difficult to manage when it's installed high up. Imagine the screen is high up, like 4 meters and above. So imagine you try to pull down the screen and bring it up. It's going to be either you're a really tall person or you need something special to help you pull down the screen and retract it. I'm not sure if that's still being practiced today. I've seen a lot of people use a long pole or stick with a hook to try to pull down the screen whenever they want to use it. And when they want to bring it back up, they have to pull it down and bring it up slowly. And it becomes very, very interesting when someone misplaces that pole. And then it says, no, how do I pull down the screen right now? I've seen a lot of people use ladders, trying to jump up and down, trying to catch the screen and so forth. So manual screens have got some of these perks and not so good stuff. And another thing that you need to take note of is within manual screens, because a lot of people may not know how to manage the pull down and retracting the screen properly. Sometimes they pull and they let it go and then the thing just rolls up, very quickly. They can damage the screen. It doesn't fold up properly, it doesn't roll up properly. And then the next time you pull it down, it's all folded. So I'm sure you have seen such incidences before where if you have used screens like this. The other option, of course, is the motorized screen. They're very easy to manage with a remote control, even up to 10 meters, real huge screen. I cannot foresee you using a manual screen that's 10 meters. So even a very large screen will be very easy to manage. And of course, like the manual screens, this can be installed high up. And because they're remote control, you don't have to worry about how do I reach to the screen and pull it down and keep it. So very, very convenient. But of course, they are more expensive than manual screens. And they are larger and heavier due to the motor mechanism and housing. So these are common things that you need to understand between the manual and the motorized screen. But in terms of usage, it's actually the same. So let's go to other kind of screens right now. Then there's the fixed frame screens. As you can see on the picture right now, you see this nice little picture frame. It looks like a picture frame, but of course this is a screen that you can project onto. Now, what is this good for? Is for applications where there's no need to retract the screen after use. You can just leave it there, and you switch off the projector, you just walk off. You don't have to keep it, it's fine. And of course, there's no damage due to rolling up and down of the screen because it's fixed. And the nice thing about it is the screen is always taut. That means it's pulled nicely and it's flat, which is something that's very important for projection. If your screen is not flat and taut, and you get this wavy effect, where every time you project an image over it, you see this distortion, which is not good. So a fixed frame screen will kind of overcome that because it's always tight. And some people, this is a personal preference thing, some people prefer it over the other kind of screen because it looks kind of neat. It just looks like a picture on the wall. So it's really, really nice. So it's your personal preference. It's nothing technical about this. Then there's real projection screens. I believe Stephen has really talked about real projection, but let's talk about the screens that are used for real projection. Now here's an example of one church using a real projection system where the projector is actually in an enclosure behind the screen, so you don't see it, which is another advantage of real projection. Now what's important is that you need to know the screens that are used for standard front projection cannot be used for real projection because as you can see here in this example, the screen is lined behind. It's blackened and light just doesn't allow it to pass through. Now, because for real projection, you need light to pass through the screen from the back, right? Otherwise you see no image. So there are special materials. There are different types. They've got the vinyl type, they've got the acrylic type, glass type. There are different types of screens that they use for real projection. So if you are going to consider real projection, you ensure that you get the right kind of screen. So please talk to your local experts, your distributors about this. And of course, there are different grades of screen material. Now, this very interesting thing called the ambient light rejection screens. And I believe a lot of churches today are asking about it because they start to hear about this technology. And they ask, how does it help in their church? Is it better than the traditional screens? Now look at this example here. So on the left is using a standard projection screen. So if you have lights shooting from the top, and it's very common, ceiling lights, and then a lot of the ceiling lights are spilling onto the screen, and then you get this very washed out image on the screen. Something like what you see on the picture here. Now with a ALR or ambient light rejecting technology, you will get much better image without that washed out effect. Now how does this work? It sounds like a miracle, right? Well, it does work. And of course, there are different qualities of ALR screens. Now, how does it help actually? The screen is made with a special design, and if you've got very, very powerful eyes like a microscope, you're able to see on the surface of the screen. There are different design ridges that allows light to reflect in a certain direction. So if you can see here, if there are ambient light coming from the top, it will either absorb or it will deflect. So it will not be reflected back to your eyes. So you don't see the ambient light reflecting off the screen. But what you see is the front projection coming in, right, and then reflecting back. So you see all the projected light, but not the ambient light. So that's the difference. Whereas for a standard screen, The standard screen reflects light, any kind of light, whether projected light, ambient light, in the same way. So that's why you see the washed out effect. You see the house light, the ceiling lights, as well as your projected image overlap. So you get this very washed out effect. So the nice thing about AR is that it will focus the projected light back to you and either absorb or throw off the unnecessary or unwanted ambient light. Here's another example. If you see on the picture on the left, there's one little patch there that is like a white wash material. You can see with the light on top, there's almost no image on that patch. Whereas for the rest, you can see the image. So that's a huge difference. If you look at the graphic on the right, you see these little ridges that I described earlier. Now this is one design of a ridge or groove. So you can see that ambient lights coming from the side or from the top will be absorbed or deflected by the ridge or surface. Then for the projected that's coming from the front, it will reflect back to you. Now, when does AR screen fail? It will fail when, if you have a projector coming from this way, or rather towards the screen this way, and then you have a very bright light in the same direction as a projector, then it doesn't make sense, Because the AR screen is designed to reflect light effectively, efficiently from the front. So if you have a light source coming in the same direction as a projector, then you will also reflect that light. So please ensure that when you're using AR screens, don't have anything bright or there's no bright source behind the projector. Okay, so it does help. So talk to your distributor. Says if you want AR screens, ask them for the options. I think it will still cost more than your standard screen, but maybe the advantage they get out of this will outweigh the cost. Because you think about it, if you want to deal with the overwhelming ambient light, you need a much more powerful projector, which translates to cost. So some people take that cost and say, I'd rather pump a little bit more money into the screen, and get a much better, brighter image. And I don't have to change my projector. So do consider that. This one is a little bit less common. This is the acoustically transparent screens. Actually, most of you would have seen an acoustically transparent screen before. If you have visited a cinema and watched a movie, you have already seen it, but just that you didn't know it. For example, if you look at the picture here, this is a typical small little theater, more like a very expensive home theater. You see the screen, but a lot of people do not know that there are actually speakers behind the screen. And that's exactly how cinemas are set up today. Okay, if you have a chance to look behind the projector screen, there are actually loudspeakers placed behind. So if you use a normal conventional screen and you put speakers behind, the sound will not be able to penetrate through the screen, It will be blocked. But these are acoustically transparent screens. So how do they look? Now there are different types. The example that I show here on this image shows there are small little perforations on the screen material. These are the design that allow the sound to pass through, and yet have light reflecting off the front. Okay, so this is one design, and there are other types. There are some materials that are like a weave kind of material, like a cloth kind of thing. So you can still reflect light off it, but allow sound to pass through it from the rear. Okay, so this is really, really interesting. Do you really need this? Now, where is this required? Of course, if you have a cinema-like kind of setup and you like to do that for your church, say this is something that you want to consider. Say, can I put speakers behind my screen? Yes, you can, but you must use the correct screen. All right? Now, then there's another application for acoustically transparent screen, which I've been using. Maybe it's a little bit unorthodox way of doing things, but this is something that I want to share with you. Now, another potential use of such material is when there are very large projector screen. And if you have used large projector screens in very, what we call acoustically challenged spaces, which means there's a lot of echoes and long reverberation. The last thing you need is another surface to reflect sound off. And a large screen can be a reflector. So one thing you might want to consider is maybe you can use such a screen that's acoustically transparent. It allows sound to pass through it, and behind it, you use some absorptive material. So you don't get that reflection off the screen as much as a conventional screen. So think about that. That could be an application for your church. This is something that people have always been asking as well, screen paint. See, what is that? Now, screen paint is, of course, something that you paint on the surface, and they use it as an alternative to a projector screen. They don't use a screen. They just paint this material onto a wall, and then they use that section to be a projection image reflector, right? If you compare a projector screen and screen paint, I And of course, a lot of other users would prefer a normal screen, especially if it's a good quality screen. But if you compare, say, a standard white wall, a whitewash wall, with a wall that's painted with a dedicated, specially designed screen paint, then the screen paint will fare better, it will perform better than a whitewash wall. Okay? When do we want to use a screen paint? Now, screen paint is a good option for users who cannot install a screen for whatever reasons. It could be structural, it could be something that people don't like to see, because some people don't like, they find screens to be unsightly. And also, screen paint can be a lower cost option. Sometimes they can be quite costly, but if you compare it, maybe it's a little bit cheaper than normal screen. So these are some of the reasons why people want to go with screen paint. But you can consider it. Even for your home, some people are actually using it for your home theater. But in churches, a lot of the places I've seen who don't want to put a screen there for whatever reason, they have resorted to using screen paint with very good results. Okay, however, for screen paint to be effective, the wall surface must be flat and smooth, free from surface imperfection, especially when you're using what we call UST projectors or ultra-short throw projectors. Because ultra-short throw projectors are really notorious for revealing imperfections on the surface. If you have things that that's jutting out, or like a brick wall, and you can see bricks jutting out, or you have little waves, all right, on the screen. So even if you're using a conventional screen and it's not straight, it's not flat, you'll see it. You see waves and you see shadows. So if you're going to use screen paint, make sure that your surface is very, very smooth and flat. Now, I'll show you an example here of wall imperfection. They can be hard to detect under, say, low light. But the moment you project and put a light on it, you'll see this. You'll see all the dots, all the rough surface and so forth. Now, if you have such a wall that has such imperfections, don't use it with screen paint, or you get someone to smoothen it out before you apply the screen paint. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your money, wasting your effort. Okay? So I hope that is clear. Let's talk about screen specifications, something that we at least understand a little bit. We don't have to be superb engineers in this, but the next time you buy a screen and you see such specification being written out, at least you know what it is. Okay, the most common one is aspect ratio, which probably Stephen has mentioned a little bit. And then there's a screen size, screen gain, and viewing angle. These are very common things that you must understand about screens. Now, let's talk about the first one. Aspect ratio, what is that? You have heard of this thing called 4:3 or 16:9, 16:10. Very, very common numbers, even used in your consumer TVs. Most of our consumer TVs are 16:9, which describes the length or the width of the screen, right, in comparison to the height of the screen, which is the image. So if you have a 16 cm, okay, it doesn't make sense, but 16 cm screen width, and then you have a 9 cm, that's a 16:9 ratio, right? So the old ratio that we used to work with is 4:3, but that is kind of obsolete already. So if you're going to go into looking for a new screen, a new display, please don't look for 4:3, unless you're looking for some retro stuff. Right? If not, please either go with 16:9 or 16:10. So the question is, whether you go with 16:9 or 16:10. Now, 16:9 is something that's very relatable to, when you watch TV, you watch movies. A lot of them are in 16:9, even your cameras are in 16:9. So if you're very much into video stuff, okay, 16:9 is probably the most common format, which is the Full HD or 4K format, as you can see on the screen here. Even the 720 format is still in HD, so to speak, and it's in a 16:9 aspect ratio. For 16:10 is mainly more for PC type of applications, because a lot of your PC screens are either in 1920 by 1200 or 1280 by 800. So if you are more towards the PC type of visuals, then you can go for 16:10. But most people will go with 16:9. But if you say, can I fit a 16:9 into a 16:10? Yes, you can. All right. But if you try to fit a 16:10 image into a 16:9 screen, that's where it gets a little bit interesting, because the height requirements are a little bit more. So you might get a little bit of black bar at the side and so forth. Or if you put a 16:9 image into a 16:10, then you get the black bar at the top and bottom. So these are things that you want to go for. So choose which one will be more applicable to you. Like I said, a lot of people just go straight away for 16:9. Even your PowerPoint presentation has a 69. Okay, so at least now you know what it is. Size. So typically screens are described by either in inches or in meters, and it's very often in inches. So you've heard people say 100-inch screen. So what is 100-inch screen? It's actually the diagonal distance between the one corner at the bottom and the diagonal opposite corner. So that is the dimension that they're referring to, not the height or the width. So it's described in the picture here. So what you see here is a 92-inch screen because it's measured from the bottom corner to the top opposite corner. Okay? So that is the way to interpret size of screen. Now, do take note that viewing area dimensions will be different. So if someone says, I have a 100-inch screen, you better clarify, say 100-inch screen for which aspect ratio? Because if you're referring to a 4:3, it's different from a 16:9. Let me give you an example. So in this table here, you see the screen size for a 4:3 format screen and a 16:9. As you can maybe refer to one example, right? Okay, let's look at the largest screen, 150-inch screen right at the bottom. For 4:3, you'll see that the width of the image is 3.05 meters or 305 cm, whereas a 16:9 screen is 3.32 meters, so it is wider. So it's different, even though both says 150-inch because it's the diagonal length. But the dimension of the screen is different. So be careful when you're referring to just one of the parameter, which is say 100-inch. Check whether you're referring to a 16:10, 16:9, or 4:3 screen. Okay? So that's hopefully that's clear. Okay, one very important thing also is called gain. Maybe you have heard of this, maybe you have not, but it's a good time to just at least know a bit. Now, a gain is basically referring to the light reflectivity of the screen. So a gain of 1.0 means that whatever you throw at it will reflect back exactly the same, theoretically. So anything that's more than 1, it actually looks brighter than what you throw at it, which is very interesting. But a gain of less than 1 will be dimmer, right? So if you look at the example at the bottom, I show 3 examples. One with high gain, medium gain, and low gain. You can see that the picture, the brightness drops, right, with the low gain. So you may ask this very interesting question. Then who wants a low gain screen, right? Everybody wants a bright image, right? Who wants a lower gain screen? Now, sometimes this has got to do with another parameter, right? And that parameter is called the viewing angle. Now, do take note that the viewing angle can get affected by the gain of the screen. So if you look at this example here, what's this screen viewing angles? This shows that if I'm a person looking at the screen, right? And whatever's reflected onto the screen, I can actually see it if I walk from the left and to the right. There is a maximum angle where when you go to the side and you look at the screen from the side, it still looks okay. But beyond that angle, it starts to distort. You lose brightness, you lose contrast, you lose a lot of things. So that is the maximum point. So they'll tell you that it is, say, 60 degrees left, 60 degrees right. So a maximum of 120. Beyond that, don't expect to see a good image from the side. So that's a maximum viewing angle. What is that going to do with gain? Now, sometimes, or most of the time, when you have a higher gain screen, the viewing angle narrows. So which means that if you go to the side, you may not see so much of the image or a good quality image. Now, how does that apply in churches then? So for example, if you have a very wide hall and it's very shallow, so people will be seeing, watching the screens from the side. A lot of them, not just from the front, but from the side. So if you get a very high gain screen, which looks great from the front, but the moment you go to the side, you lose that image. So maybe in applications like this, you say, I cannot have a high gain screen. Otherwise, people at the side may not be able to see it. So the high gain screen may be better for maybe a long, deep hall rather than a wide hall. So this is just one example. But at least this helps you understand that the interaction, that relationship between gain and viewing angle. All right? Okay, other important differences between screen types and applications you must know. For example, you may have heard of this, tension and non-tension screen. It's nothing to do with headache. This tension is the pull, okay? And then there's also the fixed frame screen with border and no border. Wow, what is this? Okay, let's talk about the tension screen first. The one shown on the left is a non-tension screen, which is very common. And the one on the right is a tension. So what is this tension thing? You can see at the side of the tension screen, there's this black section, and with some cords, ropes or whatever wires. They're actually pulling the screen from the side to make sure that it's very, very tight and flat. So whenever you roll up and roll down, it will always be in that very, very tight and flat condition, which is perfect for a good image to be reflected off. Smooth, no hot spots, no wavering, no shadowing, and things like that. But with a non-tension screen, one of the problems is that, even though it's cheaper and it's more compact, they tend to become wavy or very curly after some time. Have you seen that? Every time you go up and down, after 6 months, it says, how come the screen doesn't look as flat anymore? And that's when a non-tension screen, right, may not fare as well as a tension screen, because a tension screen will last very long, especially when you want to put a large screen, I would say 3 meters or 4 meters and beyond. That screen size, I would really recommend that you go with a tension screen, because it will definitely work better, last longer, and even though you pay more for it in the upfront cost, it will really help you in the long run. Great, so do make a choice whether you want to go for a non-tension or a tension screen. For a small screen, maybe you can get away with it, but for larger screens, I would really, really recommend that you go for a tension screen. Then there's a fixed frame screen, like this, shown in the picture. It comes with either a border, typically like the one shown in the picture, a black border, or some without border. So it just looks like a flat piece of board, right, on the wall. The screen material is wrapped around a frame, metal structure usually. And in this case, it's surrounded by a black border. It really looks like a picture frame, so some people like it. But some people may not like the look of the surrounding frame. So there are different people with different preference. And they say, can I not see the frame? Then if that's the case, they say you can go with one that doesn't have the border. So the screen material is wrapped around, but you don't have this black border around. Some prefer it. They say it looks simple, very clean and neat, especially when the wall is white. And then they don't want to put something on it, and then it spoils the white wall. Okay, a lot of people got different reasons. So at least now you know it exists, and you can make a choice. So here's an example of one without the border, something that I implemented for one church. What is shown here is actually a confidence screen using an ultra short throw. Now this black frame thing, okay, just follow me a little bit here. It can kind of improve the image contrast when the frame is placed around a white background. Now think about this. Look at this image. I like to use animals. This image is now placed on a white surface. Now look at it for a while, and then now I'm going to put a black frame around it. Somehow the black frame helps you to focus better on the picture. Somehow the colors and the contrast becomes a little bit more alive when there's a frame around it. So sometimes this black frame does have an advantage over a frameless one. So you can see from here, there's actually no hard and fast rule as to which one is better, a frame or without a frame. But at least now you know there might be a difference, and then whatever suits your preference, just go for it. Let me just come back to this. I know that Stephen has already covered on the various types of projectors and LED video walls and LCD video walls. But I've been presented with this question by many churches, especially when they are doing a lot of upgrading now with the COVID thing coming down and opening up a little bit. They want to upgrade their video system. And they ask, should we stick back to projectors or should we move on to LED video walls? To them, it's a huge upgrade. So let's talk about that. Let's address some of the things that we need to know, right, before you make that decision. Why many churches are considering switching to LED video walls? Image visual appeal is usually the biggest reason, the wow factor. In fact, personally, I love LED video walls. They look great. They can really look exciting. I'm not saying that projectors don't look exciting, but there's something about LED video walls that are different from projectors. It's got its strengths and weaknesses. Let's talk about that. And they're also very effective in bright ambient light or bright stage light. So if you have a very lively, vibrant worship stage setup, right? A huge band, loud music, and a lot of lights, everywhere, moving heads and so forth. Sometimes the projector screens suffer because of the spills. Now, so especially if you want to put screens behind the band and things like that, then there's no way you can use a projector system. Your best bet is to go for an LED video wall. Okay, so very, very effective in such applications. Of course, you have heard there's a much longer operational lifespan. I'm not sure whether Stephen has covered this in a little bit in detail, but let's just go through this in summary. Now, as you know, projector lamp type, typically they run up to 2,000 hours. And of course, with laser light source, it can go up to 20,000 or even 30,000, depending. So that's kind of closing the gap. But with an LED video wall display, it can go anywhere between 60,000 to 100,000 hours on spec. So, which means in the best case scenario, this can be equivalent to using an LED screen if every day you use 6 hours, which means the LED screen can last 45 years, which is kind of almost ridiculous to some extent. Nobody uses something for 45 years. Now, this is in theory, because based on the specification of the LED, they can last that long. All right? So these are some of the things that people tend to be attracted to for LED video walls. Now, let's talk about other things. Now, what things do we need to think about? Firstly, is the cost. I want to be honest about this. The upfront cost, most of the time, will be higher than a typical projector system, most of the time. Well, of course, sometimes you might find a very cheap LED video wall, but let's talk about that in a while. The upfront cost is definitely higher, but if you consider the long-term costs, for example, if you're going to use projectors, and I think most of us have used projectors, especially the high-powered ones, you know the maintenance costs, the replacement of bulbs and so forth. We were using 4 bulbs in the past, and each bulb can be a few $100s to $1,000+ per bulb. So when you change them very regularly, the cost just keeps adding up in the long run. And also the projector, you cannot use it for 10, 20 years and expect to perform the same way. So there will be replacement. So if you consider some of this long-term costs versus some of the upfront costs for LED video walls and how long they can last, maybe there's something for you to consider. So it really depends on whether the church committee is going to consider the long-term cost or the upfront cost. Because upfront cost will be high, but if you think about long-term, maybe it says, yeah, that makes sense. If we have less problem with this particular solution, maybe we'll go for it. So do think about that. There are pros and cons for both. Also, LED video walls may not be as easy to install and implement as projector system. Right? You think about it, they are usually pretty big and they can be very heavy, by the way, right? Because of the structure that needs to prop it up, whether you fly it up or you suspend it on the wall, like the picture shown here, they may require additional structural supports. So if you want to have, say, a 5 meter, 6 meter LED video wall, I say, can I mount it on my wall? And your wall is basically just a very thin gypsum drywall, right? Chances are that when you mount it on it, the whole thing will just collapse. So these are things that you have to consider. You have to think about whether structurally your ceiling can hold it or your wall can hold it. If not, of course, there are solutions to that. You can get people to come in and reinforce it, right? Whether you reinforce the ceiling or you reinforce the wall. And that way it can bear the load of the LED video system. Okay? But what does this mean? It means that there will be costs involved. There will be some construction work involved. And when it comes to such heavy loads, you will also have to consider the case of getting a professional engineer or PE to come in to certify all these works. So all these are hidden costs that we may not know of. So remember, if you, say, find a LED video wall that costs, say, $30,000, that's not just the cost itself. There are other peripherals, other things to consider. Okay? So don't just look at the upfront cost like this, just the cost of the LED panels. There's other things. But if the cost is not an issue, say, oh yeah, it's within our budget and it's fine, I say, wow, that's great, just go for it. Another thing is, there are some limitations, LED video walls can't do compared to projectors. Like for example, if you want to have environmental projection, like the one that's shown here in this picture, this is one of the church that I did. And I know that the Hope Church, where Stephen comes from, has a very, very impressive environmental projection system on, but which is encompassing most of the walls in the sanctuary. So if you want to do something like that, you can't expect the entire sanctuary, unless you got really big budget, all the walls to be LED panels. So if this is the case, the best option to go forward is to use projectors and project it onto the walls. Right? So projectors has got some advantage over LED video walls. Okay, so think about your application. One may work for this, but it may not work for the other. All right? And the most important thing, of course, is some people may not talk about this. Now, I mentioned earlier they can last 60,000 to 100,000 hours. Now, that is in theory. But remember, there are other things that work hand in hand with the LEDs. Like for example, the electronics, right? The power supply, the transmit receive cards and all the other things, the processor. Now these are things that work together with the LED panels and they can fail. So it's not just the LED we're talking about. So sometimes you get all these other peripherals failing, and that's the reason why the LED video wall, so to speak, as a system doesn't last as long. So there are other things that breaks down. And another thing to note is the effect on the image when the LED device is faulty can be quite obvious. It's very different from a projector. Now look at this. This is a very, very common fault. Some people may not see it. This is an LED video wall. And you see this little red dot at the bottom? There's a typical 40 pixel. So you have to replace the part. Some people don't mind it and say, oh, just a small thing. I can get it replaced maybe next week or the following week, right? But there can be some other more pronounced faults, right, that affects the whole panel. And it can be very visual, like shown in this example here, where the whole square is taken out, there's no image and things like that. So these are things that you may encounter when you have faults with the LED video wall that you don't see with projectors. The projectors either is blur image or there's no image. But here we have an image but missing parts here and there. So these can be quite common as well. Now, this hopefully will not discourage you from adopting an LED video wall. Let me go to the next slide and I'll tell you why. Final word of advice, do not be enticed by cheaper variants. Maybe there's a catch to it. Because one system may cost 50,000 and one will cost 10,000. But they look the same. So there must be a catch. Why one costs so much over the other? Probably there's a catch. Quality could be it. So always check for track records on reliability and after-sales technical support. Very important. Again, do not just look at the upfront cost, okay, and say, this is cheap, I'll buy it, I'll implement it. But think about what's going to happen after that. That's very important because I've seen too many church projects failing because of such decisions made. They go for a cheaper one without even thinking about or researching on the quality of the product, the quality of the company that's supplying it. These are very, very important things, right? So research on this before you sign the dotted line. Now, once you've done all your homework and says, yes, that's a very good product, it's been tested, the company is great, they got good after-sales support, I say, go for it, and then you're good to go, and then you can enjoy the very nice image, and you can deliver years of amazing video images for your church services. So remember, they are good. It's a good option. So, but do your homework. It's the same thing as projectors, as Stephen has brought up. There are good and not so good products out there. As long as you go for a good one, you last you for years, you give you good quality images and problem-free operations. So that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I hope it has been helpful for you and it has been enjoyable as it has been enjoyable for me. And I just want to thank Stephen again for presenting the first part. And so now I'll hand the time back to Thomas.
Thank you, Robert. Do send in your questions as we switch over to live for the Q&A session. Please bear with us as we make the switch.